Well, this is chapter 3 and 7 of World Civilizations. We're going to be talking about early civilizations in India and China. We'll start with page 1 and page 2 later, that we'll deal both of those with India, and then page 3 and 4 with China. So this first part of the page is talking a lot about the geography of India and what effect it had. So the diversity of geography. So India is a subcontinent, which is a large landmass that juts out from a continent. And all the years I've taught geography and world history, this is really the only one that's ever called a subcontinent, is India. But you can see how it goes down into the Indian Ocean and large amounts of water on both sides. Okay? So mountains, of course, is the Himalaya Mountains, located to the northeast of India. This mountain range limited contacts with other lands and helped India develop a distinct culture. Yet it was not a complete barrier. There was some access and had contact with other people, but again, given the time period, they didn't have the contact like we would today with air travel and cell phones and all of that. A plateau is a raised area of level land, like the Deccan Plateau. So the southern half of the Indian subcontinent is occupied by the Deccan Plateau. Monsoons, a seasonal wind that helped shape Indian life. A lot of people think that the monsoon is the rain, but the monsoon is actually the wind. The monsoon carries moisture-laden air, so it's the storm that comes in that's called the monsoon. And of course it creates heavy rainfall. One thing on the plateau, so the Deccan Plateau does go from the Ganges Valley to the southern tip of India. So unlike India today, which has 110 languages and more than 1,000 dialects, there were more isolated groups. We start out with the Indus Valley civilization. This was actually discovered in 1922, but it emerged around 2500 BC, had two great cities that were known as Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. Each of those had about 35,000 residents each, which is pretty amazing considering that time period. There's also remains of approximately 1,000 other settlements that were found in this area. This was between about 3000 BC to 1500 BC. The cities were carefully planned, and that, of course, is evidence of a well-organized government in order to carry out many of these projects that were needed by these people. Oh, I forgot to mention one that's kind of interesting with the monsoon. We talk about it in my geography class. One of the wettest places on earth is in India. I'm thinking the name, if I can remember it right, is called Cherrapunji. But they hold the record for the most rainfall in a month, about 366 inches, which is approximately 30 feet of rain in one month. So that's pretty amazing. Okay, Aryan civilization. So this is the next section. This is an Indo-European speaking nomadic people. They looted and destroyed cities of the Indus Valley. They came in from Southwest Asia. I have to look and see some of these original notes I've divided and some I haven't. So the next one, the Vedas, approximately 2000 BC. It was a collection of prayers, hymns, and other religious teachings. And our knowledge of the Aryans comes from these Vedas, and this is also a time called the Vedic Age. So around 1000 BC, they started writing a language called Sanskrit, and this is one of the earliest writings, but those early writings were called Vedas. Just make sure I mentioned everything I want to on these notes. Okay? So Aryan Society, they had Brahmins or priests, Kshatriyas or warriors, Vaishyas or herders, farmers, artisans, and merchants, and Sudras were the farm workers, servants, and other laborers. They occupied the lowest level. Now that being said, there is technically another level lower than that. We'll talk about it on the next one with the caste system. But these were the social classes of India. I keep forgetting. So back with the Vedas, they talked a lot about daily life in India with marriage and children. And there's also something else that had happened called sati. When a woman and a man marry, life goes on, but if something happens to him and he dies, the prospect of her getting remarried is not very good. It's just part of India's culture and history. It's unfortunate too. And the government is trying to change some of these, but so what would happen is when they have a funeral, the husband's body would be burned. That's a typical, excuse me, that's a typical way of I guess, destroying the body, or the funeral for India is to have a funeral pyre. Well, the woman, while watching her husband's body burn, would actually go and jump on the funeral pyre. And the government has outlawed that, but how are you going to stop somebody from doing that? So that's something else that has happened in their past. Okay? So the caste system, you might remember, if you had my geography class last year, we talked about this. So the castes are the social groups into which people are born and which they cannot change. At least it's very difficult to change. The caste is a Portuguese word used to describe society. The Indians use the word jati. And those four in the previous section were the names of the different castes. Also the word varna is used. These castes that people are born into are also based on religious purity. So one group is better than the next and better than the next. But I also mentioned that that lowest level below the Sudras. Okay, you can see this, the four castes here, and the top three are known as twice-born groups. We'll talk about reincarnation here in a bit. But then you've got this group called untouchables. So at the lowest level of Indian society, excuse me, I don't know what's wrong today, were the untouchables, and they made up about 5% of the population, but they did menial, degrading tasks that nobody else would do. And in geography, I mentioned this quick story. It was from an article in National Geographic, and it shows a picture of a guy sitting with his legs dangling into a manhole. And his job, so he's got this diaper-looking thing on, I don't know what they're called, sorry. But then he has basically excrement all over his body. And he, in the story, it says that he went to 3 or 4 different homes, and just somebody that might have a water outlet on the outside of the house, he asked 3 or 4 different people before one person would say, okay, for him to clean himself off. So that was the type of people that were in the untouchable group. They were without a caste, but they are a part of that. I mean, this is the caste system, but they're also part of it, really. Okay? Brahman was a single spiritual power that resided in all things. This is kind of the supreme god. Rajas are princes. They were chiefs that led Aryan tribes. They were the most skilled war leaders. They carved out small states, and they were often at war with each other, these different rajas or princes, these chiefs. Okay. The Mahabharata is India's greatest epic. It's an epic poem. It contained 90,000 lines of poetry, and those lines are called stanzas. It describes some great battles that were fought. On our next one, we'll talk about a couple of the characters that are part of that story. Okay, the Ramayana recounts deeds of the daring hero Rama and his bride. Now, Rama was probably a fictional hero, but again, is still a major part of that story. But this epic poem talked about moral lessons, different values, virtue, and loyalty are taught throughout this story. And that concludes our page 1. Thank you.